So the first part, we learn about class. We learn about the class and we learn about the fields. So now we know about the class is the class to create the object, and fields are the data or the attributes of the class. Now let's look at methods. And in this method, I'm going to teach you one of the method. We call it non-static method. So we have the instance method. In this case, for the class point, when we have the x equals to 0 and y equals to 0, this is only the class. Now let's make a new method like this one. Okay, let me just put here. So in the point.py, okay, I have one file point.py, and you have the class point. Now let's put one additional method. We have the def translate. And what is the translate? Okay, we have the self. I will explain what does it mean by self later. And we will have two parameters. So let's create the dx and dy. So self dot x equals to self dot x plus dx. So if I have one city, if I have a city and I have a value of x, I would like to translate. It means I would like to change the city location from one point to another point. And then the point will be defined in this parameter. And then also the same with the y. I want to change the y with the self.y plus dy. Okay. You can make it short. Self.y and self.y plus dy, it means plus equal dy. Okay. We know already this definition based on the previous code that we have before this chapter. Okay. So this is a new method. Let me just give a comment adding new method. Okay. So what does it mean by this method? Let's look at the detail. So the translate method has two parameters, dx and dy. And we have self. Okay, what is self? Sorry, I think this is too small. Let me make it bigger. Is it possible? Okay, this is self. What is self? Self is a parameter that reference the object itself. Yeah, we need to have this one to indicate something about its object. So if we have P1, then when we call P1.translate, Python can understand what is the content of P1. If we have P2 dot translate, so Python can understand what are the content of P2. The content means what is the value of X and what is the Y of P1. When we call P2, then it means there is another X and there is another Y which is different from P1. That's why we need to understand, we need to use self, because every object will have different values. Another object will have different values. So using self, you can access objects members in the class definition. When you use the self, it means I would like to access its own data member. Now let's look at the implementation. Let's put these two lines in the test point.py. Test point 2, okay, we have already the P1 equals to point, P1.x equals to 2, like this one. Now let's put more function. So I want to translate. What does it mean by translate? So let's use the P2. Okay. I can call, if you look at this one, P2, oh, cannot use this. So if you have P2 dot in PyCharm, will automatically show you the variable, which is y, x that you can access, and we have m. In m, it is method. So the method translate content of self, dx, and dy. So you can call the translate, and then based on this information, there are two parameters, dx and dy. Now let's assume I want to change the x from the original value plus 3 and the y, I would like to change it from the original value plus 2. Then I can print p2.x, p2.y. Let's look at this one. Based on the previous example, we know that this p1.x is 2. Then the x is 2 and the y is 0. So 2 and 0. We have p2. p2.y is 4. p2.y equals to p2.y multiplied by 3. So it is 12. And x is plus by 1. So x is 1 and y is 12. Now I would like to translate it. So the x will be added by 3. 1 plus 3 equals to 4. 12 plus 2 equals to 14. And the result will be shown here. Okay. How do we know that it is plus? So the translate. Okay. So you can again press Ctrl and then move your mouse here. Now you will see this is the statement. So x plus dx, it is 1 plus 3 because dx is 3 and dy is 2. So y plus 2 and 12 plus 2 is 14. So we call this is the instance method. Okay. The instance method, it defines the behavior of its object. We have the name of the method. You can define the name, and do not forget about self. every method should follow with self. And we can define any parameters. So if there is no parameters, that's also fine. But usually, yeah, if we have parameters, yeah, you need to define what is the parameters here and the statements. The parameter includes self. The parameter includes self. And to call the data members, it requires to use self since it is to access the object's data member. Okay, so this is what you already know. We need to have self, and then there are two parameters. So the method types, there are two kind of method types. So some methods allow clients to access or modify. If we want to access it, we call it accessor. Accessor means a method that let clients access the object fields. So accessor often have a return type. So yeah, there should be a return. Yeah. It's not mandatory, but often means most of the time we have return. The other method type we call it mutator or modify. So the word mutator means a method that modifies an object state. So let's say, yeah, we have x equal to 0 at the first time. So we want to change, we want to modify x. X should be 2. Then you assign 2 to x, and we need to use a method named mutator. Mutators often have no return type. So the one that we learned here is the mutator. We call it, this is mutator. Why? Because we want to change the value of x. Okay, we want to change the value of x, and we want to change the value of y. And in this case, there is no return type. Okay, we learn about the accessor and mutator. Now, let's try to figure out this problem. We have a mutator method questions. Write a method set location that changes a point's location to the new x and y values. So for example, I have already P1. So when we create the object P1, x equals to 0 and y equals to 0. But I want to change this location to a new value. Maybe let's say x equals to 4 and y equals to 5. So let's make a new method set location. So there will be a new x and new y. You may need to refactor. Sometimes we call it refactor, or sometimes we call it change, or sometimes we call it just modify. Okay. We can modify the point class to use this method. We can change the point class to use this method. And after we modify the point class, let's modify the client code to use these methods as appropriate. Okay, now let's have a new method. So it is a class point. It is the same with the previous one, x equals to 0, y equals to 0, and then I have the method translate. It is self x equals to self x plus dx, like this one, and then self y plus equal dy. Now I would like to make a new method. Okay, so I will remove this one. Now I will make a mutator method. So this mutator method is a method set location. Please do not forget about self. And then I need to define what is the new x and what is the new y. I need to define what is the new x and what is the new y. The problem or the question is how we can change the location of x into the new x and change the current y to the new y. Then we can just easily define self x equals to the new x and self y equals to the new y. Then finish. After we have this new method, now let's run. Oh, yeah, you can have your point, test point. For example, I want to have this is test point. Okay, let me have test point 2. So let's say P2 equals to set location 8,8. Then I can print P2 x and then P2 dot y. So using the set location, we have a new x is 8 and a new y is 8. So when I print those two variables, x and y, now it becomes 8 and 8. So this is the mutator method. Now, let's look at more details. There is another kind of alternative solution. If I already have this mutator method, I can reuse this method. What does it mean by reuse? So I do not need the translate method like this one. Instead of using this kind of way, we can make something like this one. So you can make comments. So you do not need to run this translate. Okay, so you can make comment. You can make comment. Oh, sorry, not this one. I need to go to the point. So you can make comment for this one. And then I can make a new function, def translate. So this translate, again, we will have the dx and dy, but what we are going to do is to call the set location function. So here I will tag to do the set location. So the set location means I would like to put a new value of x by calling the self.x plus dx. Dx is from this value. And then calling the self.y or the original data plus dy. dy is the new value in the parameter. So using this translate, we can reuse the existing function in this class. Yeah, of course, this you need to understand this one properly to make this kind of method in your class. So this is also another mutator method. So this is another mutator method. You can make comment by using this comment means you will not execute this one. Instead, you will execute this one. Okay. The results is the same. Okay. Even though the way to do the statement are different, but the results are the same. Now, we can try the accessor method. What is accessor method? We want to access the data, okay, and we want to return it. So write a method distance that computes the distance between a point and another point parameter. So we can use the formula x2 minus x1 power of 2 plus y2 minus y1 power of 2, and then we do the square root. Modify the client code to use these methods. Now, let's make a new method. This is the accessor method. Okay, I will make a new method, def distance. Okay, I will make this one new accessor. Okay, so the distance, again, every kind of method in the class, you need to make one new parameter, which is self. Okay, self is necessary because it is to get the data from each object. And then let's say I would like to make a new parameter, which is other. So what does it mean by other? The question here is compute the distance between one point, a point, and another point. So it means this is one object and this is another object. So let's say I have P1 and I have P2. So I want to calculate the distance between P1 and P2. And I can define this code. Let's say I have the dx. Dx means the current x minus by the other dot x. So the dy means the self dot y minus the other dot y. Can you understand? I would like to put another point. So this other means another object. Let's say I want to calculate the P1 and P2. So if P2 is an object, then I can access the x. If P2 is also an object, then I can access the y. Okay. Then after I know the dx, which is this one is x2 minus x1. Okay. So this one is y1, y2 minus y1. Okay. Then I can make a return. Okay. the return is, I can use just mathematical function, math dot square root. The square root is a function from math. You may have an error because whenever you use this function, you need to import it. Okay. So you need to call the import dot math, or you can just move your mouse and click this one, import this thing. When you click import math, then import math automatically will be written. And after you have that one, you can just continue with the code. So dx star star 2, what does it mean? This is dx power of 2. dy star star 2. So this is also the same, dy power of 2. So in the code that I provide is dx multiplied by dx. So it's the same. Okay. Dx multiplied by dx means dx power of 2. dy multiplied by dy means dy power of 2. Then okay, I can try to do this one in the client. How can I do it client? So I can call p1 dot distance. So I want to compare the distance between p1 and the other point. Let's say I want to calculate with the p2. So p1 is the original object, and I want to calculate the distance between p1 and another object, which is p2. And yeah, you can put this one as a kind of variable, and then we can print this. So the distance is 10. We can put this result into a variable this because distance is an accessor. Distance is a method, and it will return a value from this mathematical formula. When it returns a value, we can put it into a variable. Now, there is another question. In addition, write a method distance from origin that returns the distance between a point and the origin 0, 0. It means if I know a particular point x2, let's say x equals to 8 and y equals to 2, then the formula will be x, which is 8, minus x1 is 0, plus y, it is 2, minus 0. So we will do the square and we will do the square. Okay. Modify the client code to use this method. So you can have a new function. So I have distance from origin. Because the distance from origin, I do not compare with any point. Then I can just return the math.sqrt self power of 2 plus self y power 2. Okay, any number minus 0 will be its own number. Okay, then I can just directly solve x power 2 and solve y power 2. So the complete of the client program will be like this one. Let's see. I will copy and paste, and then I will make test point 303, test point 03, test point 03. So the first, we have P1 object. The x will be 0 and y will be 0. P1.x equals to 2, then it will be changed to 2, and P1.y equals to 3, then this one is 3. Now we create another object, P2. Okay, so this is P1. P2 is an object, and originally it is 0 and y also 0. But now we change y equals to 4. Okay, y now it becomes 4, and change y again equals to 3. So we can change it to 3. Now we want to translate the P2. Translate means we will change the value, or we will modify the value. So x will be added by 3 and y will be added by 2. And this one becomes 3 and this one becomes 5. We would like to measure the distance. P2 got distance P1. And we would like to measure between 2 and 3 and 3 and 5. So we will get the value is 2 something something something. If we want to calculate the distance from the origin, so we can just call P2 and call the function distance from origin. So the result is 5 point something something. We can run. So okay, then the result is 2.23 for distance between P2 and P1, and the distance from origin for P2 is 5.8 something. Okay. So as a summary of this object and the class, you can look on this detail in PyCharm. So for example, you can go to view, okay, and then you can go to tool window and go to structure. So if you go to point, I cannot make it large, so you can see here, okay, in the left panel, the class point. There is two kind of values, two kind of data, which is x and y. And then you have four methods: set location, translate, distance, and distance from origin. And you will see that the set location has two parameters, or maybe exactly there are three parameters, one self and the other two are integer. translate have three parameters. One is self and the other two is integer and so on. Okay. So you can look the details here and you can go to each of this method. You can go here, you can go here. So you can see all the data members that is in yellow, and you can also see the function or methods in pink. Now, the last thing that we can learn from this object is about constructor. Okay, what is constructor? Whenever you create the object, you need three lines. What are they? Let's say I create the P1 as a new point, and you will need to define P1.x equals to 3, P1.y equals to 8. So this always three lines. How about if we have a lot of data? Then there will be so many. If we have 5 data, then there will be 5 lines. If we have 10 data, then we will have 10 lines. So we call it this is tedious or time consuming. We could pass the field's initial value as parameters. So I can just make P or an object P1 and I call point 3, 8. So 3 represent the X and 8 represent the Y. So you can use like this. So we are able to do this with most type of objects. Okay. So in this case, I'm going to explain with point. Now we will update the point.py. When you update the point.py, we need to replace the early parts of the code. So you can update this one. We are going to update this one with this one. We'll update with this one. So I will show you. So I will not use the x equals to 0, y2 equals to 0 again. Let me just remove this. So instead of this one, I would like to use the def. You can see underbar, underbar, init, underbar, underbar. Okay, underbar, underbar, init, underbar, underbar. Again, we need to define the self, and there are two parameters. Let's just make it xx and yy. Xx and yy. After you have this in it, now I would like to mention that the variable x equals to the xx that I define here, and then the variable y equals to the yy that I define in this bracket. Okay. We call this is constructor. The constructor means initialize the state of new objects. So it runs when the client use underbar underbar init, underbar underbar. So we call this is the constructor. And the constructor does not specify a return type. Okay, there is no return type. There is no return. implicitly returns the new object being created. So it is automatically will return the value. If a class has no constructor, okay, so you can see before we create this one, there is no constructor. So Python give it a default constructor with object parameter. So if you don't have any init, like what we did before, if you don't have any init, this one, then yeah, we can just say like this one, y equals to 0, x equals to 0. This is also okay. But in most of the object oriented, we want to use the constructor because of the convenience to create a new object. Now, let's create a new client program. So this client program, let's make it test.04. Okay, you can see since there are two parameters, it requires to put two arguments every time we create object. So I will copy and paste this one. I will make a new Python file. I will make a new Python file, Python test.04. So in the test.04, now I would like to create the point P1 with two parameters, which has x is 2 and y is 3. So if I print p1.x, then it will print 2 and 3. Okay, so it will print 2 and 3. P2 is 4, 3. Then if I print this one, then it will show 4 and 3. If I translate the P2 is 4. If I translate with 3, then it means the result will be 7 and 5. If I calculate the distance between P2 and P1, then yeah, we get this value. If I want to calculate the distance from origin, we get this value. So yeah, we can get this result. Yeah, as I mentioned to you, we call this as a constructor. And we can have a default constructor. The default constructor means when there is no arguments or when the arguments are blank. So let's see like this one. If I have a new point, P3 equals to point, and I put blank, what happened? P3.x, P3.y. What is the result? It will show errors. What is the errors? We cannot find two arguments. So in this point, there is no argument. That's why it is error. In order to avoid this kind of error, so we can make a default constructor. The meaning by default constructor means I can define the x. If there is no definition, it will be 0. I can define the y. If there is no information, then the y will be 0. Then I can change the point by adding equals to 0 and yy equals to 0. By using this one, now I can run again. You will see the result of P3 now is 0, 0. It means if there is no information, then it will use the default value, which is 0 and 0. Okay, I guess this is time to finish the class. Any questions, comments?